All right, let's pull back the curtain on something we all use every single day, but almost never really think about money. And to do that, we have to start with a pretty wild idea.
I mean, really think about that for a second. What if the vast majority of all the money in the world isn't actually sitting in a vault somewhere? It's not even on a server, just waiting. It's waiting to be born. And it only comes into existence at the exact moment someone decides to go into debt.
Now, this isn't some fringe conspiracy theory, okay? This is literally how our modern financial system is built. It's the design. And it all starts not with money, but with something way older and way more human. A simple promise.
To really get our heads around this, we've got to go way, way back. I'm talking before coins, before paper, before we were even writing things down. We have to look at a time when the entire economy was built on just two things: trust and obligation. In early human societies, this was pretty much the whole system, right? It was this invisible web of favors. You knew that if you shared your food today, someone would share theirs with you tomorrow when you needed it. There were no coins, no ledgers, just a social IOU logged in everyone's memory. And this right here, this is the fundamental problem. That system of trust, it's incredibly powerful, but it's got a hard limit. It works just fine in a little village where you know everybody. But what happens when you start building cities, trading with strangers? How do you trust someone you've never met? That personal web of trust it shatters. It doesn't scale. So humanity needed a new piece of tech to keep track of all those promises. And so that's what we did. We invented a way to formalize and measure all those obligations. We didn't invent money first. Nope. We invented a system to track debt.
You can see the evolution right here. We went from just remembering who owed who to writing it down. Around 2000 BCE in Mesopotamia, you start seeing these clay tablets that are basically just ledgers, records of who owed what to whom. It was only way later, around 600 BCE, that governments got in on the game and started minting coins as a sort of standardized, state-guaranteed way to measure all those debts.
So here's the key takeaway. We have to completely redefine what money is. It's not actual wealth. A dollar bill has no inherent value. It's an IOU. It's a portable, transferable, and most importantly, an enforceable record of a debt. It's just a way of carrying a promise around in your pocket.
And this is where things get a little mind-bending. Debt isn't really about the past or even the present. When you hold a debt, what you're really holding is a claim on someone's future. Their future work, their future creativity, their future resources. It's a promise that value will be delivered at some point down the road.
Okay, so let's fast forward to today and see how this all connects to the really strange world of modern finance. Because today, we don't just record debts that already exist, we actually use the act of creating debt to create the money itself.
All right, this slide is the key to the whole thing. When you go to a bank for a mortgage to buy a house, the bank doesn't reach into a vault of other people's savings. It doesn't. It just types new numbers into your account. And poof, just like that, new digital money is created out of thin air. It's backed by nothing more than your promise to pay it back. And then that new money flows out into the economy as if it was always there. And here's the beautiful, terrifying paradox at the heart of the system. The bank created the money for the loan, right? But it didn't create the extra money you need to pay the interest. So where does that money come from? Well, the only way for the system as a whole to pay back all of its debts with interest is for more new loans to be made. The total amount of money has to constantly expand. The system demands perpetual growth. This is the very essence of our economy. We are, fundamentally, pulling future economic activity into the present moment. Every new loan is a bet. It's a bet that the future will be bigger and more productive and generate enough new value to pay everything back plus some. We are literally spending tomorrow's earnings today. And it gets even weirder. We've built these abstract entities, corporations, governments, that act like people. They can borrow and own things, but unlike people, they don't have a lifespan. So you get this crazy self-sustaining loop where institutions create debt to make money, which they use to fund themselves, which allows them to, you guessed it, create even more debt. So you're probably thinking, wow, this sounds incredibly fragile, right? A whole system built on a promise of infinite future growth? It sounds like a house of cards. And you know what? You're not wrong. It requires constant, careful management to keep the whole thing from tumbling down.
I mean, it's the obvious question. With this immense weight of all these future promises pressing down on us, why doesn't it all just collapse? Well, the answer lies with the managers of the machine.
This is where central banks like the Federal Reserve come into play. Their entire job is to keep this machine running smoothly. If the economy slows down, they hit the gas. They lower interest rates to make borrowing cheaper, encouraging more money creation. If things get too hot, they tap the brakes by raising rates. And in a real full-blown crisis, they just hit the emergency button and create massive amounts of money themselves to keep the whole system from freezing up.
But when you boil it all down, after all the complex mechanics and policies, the entire system runs on one simple human thing: belief. It works because we all collectively believe it's going to work tomorrow. We believe our money will be worth something. We believe people will pay back their loans. We believe the future will be prosperous enough to cover all its debts. Confidence isn't just part of the system, it is the system.
But what happens when we've spent too much of the future? When the debt load gets too heavy and our belief starts to wobble? Well, pressure builds, and that pressure always finds a release. Sometimes it's what you might call a natural reset, a pandemic that scrambles everything. Other times it's man-made, a market crash that wipes out fortunes, or even a war, which tragically just clears the board of old debts and values.
So this is the world we're living in. An economic system where money is a promise and debt is a claim on a future that isn't even written yet. Every time you use a credit card, every time a company takes out a loan, it's an act of reaching into that unwritten future, pulling its potential into our present, and just betting that we'll all be able to work hard enough to make it real.
And look, for most of modern history, that bet has paid off spectacularly. It's fueled incredible innovation and growth. But it leaves us with this huge, unsettling question. Are there limits? How much of tomorrow can we keep spending today before the future finally shows up and says, sorry, I'm tapped out?
In the end, our economy isn't just about dollars and cents. It's a machine that runs on faith. As this says, it doesn't just measure what things are worth today, it measures our collective belief, our hope in what comes next. Thanks for tuning in.